This program is brought to you in part by the Eugenie and Joseph Jones Family Foundation, a local foundation proud to support education, the arts, and culture in the greater New Orleans area.
Support for this program comes from the Gail and Tom Benson Charitable Foundation, committed to funding educational causes.
Hello, Marcia Kavanaugh. Thanks so much for joining us. Well, having originated from the Facebook empire, the company known as Meta Platforms, Inc. has developed a face of its own in the technology world and will have a major presence in Louisiana. We'll look at what to expect, and we'll also examine the ongoing debate about vaccinations, and there is a proposed settlement in the Hard Rock building collapse case. These stories, plus analyzing a mayoral debate, and the latest on the race for Orleans Parish Sheriff are on the schedule for tonight's Informed Sources. Errol, Laborde, producer of Informed Sources, Don Ostrom, Channel 12's Future Watch reporter, James Finn, staff writer, the Times-Picayune, the New Orleans Advocate, and Stephanie Riegel, staff writer for the Times-Picayune, the New Orleans Advocate. And let's stick with Stephanie right now because Meta Inc., it's going to build big time in Louisiana and really have a very big impact, particularly in a certain section of the state where it's going.
Yeah, so this massive AI data center, which Meta has said is going to be the largest in the United States, is in Holly Ridge, Louisiana, a tiny, tiny little rural community in the middle of Richland Parish. So that's about 30 miles east of Monroe. And this has been a very small agricultural parish, sparsely populated, that's been struggling economically for a long time. It's very beautiful. It's very lovely. Meta settled on that site after Entergy officials lured them to the state when they heard that they were looking at Arkansas instead, and they were like, "Well, hey, come over next door. We've got some land. We have cheap power." And this particular site is interesting because it was sold to the state of Louisiana for economic development purposes back during Kathleen Blanco's administration. We were trying to lure a Toyota manufacturing plant here. And so these wealthy farmers in that area sold their land to the state and said, you can have this site, and try to market it. So I say that because there's always been the potential that something big was going to go there. Well, it is big. And when you're driving around up there and you feel like you're in the middle of nowhere, this sort of bucolic, very picturesque countryside, and all of a sudden, giant cranes, massive, massive industrial construction equipment, and it's going up very, very fast. Construction started in January, and I was there in late July with a photographer and spent a couple of days just talking to people on the ground about the impact. And I mean, Boomtown really is almost an understatement when you see how quickly things are changing. Land speculation, land that was going for like $2,000 to $3,000 an acre earlier this year, or right before the deal was announced, is now $50,000 to $60,000 an acre. Wow. People are cashing in, cashing out, moving out. Those who do live in the area, especially near the site, are understandably very mixed and sad about it. But there are other people that are excited, trying to make money, and then there are a lot of speculators coming in from the outside, as always happens.
A way of life is going by the wayside,
for sure.
Seems like. I mean, even with the building going on right now, there have to be a lot of people who have come in to do that construction. Right? Yes, something like 5,000 construction jobs are going to be created over the next 2 to 3 years while this thing gets completed. And there's not the workforce to support that in the parish, even though they've promised to hire as many locals as possible. So you have several man camps, these modular housing facilities going up with RV parks and just large modular buildings. The fanciest ones of them, if that's the right adjective to use, is going to have a movie theater and basketball courts and, softball fields and gyms and all this kind of stuff. You might remember man camps kind of got notorious up in the Bakken Shale area about a decade ago when they were
I don't know. Everybody's promised it's not going to happen in Richland Parish, which doesn't even have a bar, by the way. It's not a dry parish. But you can imagine things are going to change fast if there's not a bar or a 24-hour liquor store in a place that's going to have man camps.
What about a grocery store even?
There is not a grocery store. We went to the WYES Mart, which is just a delightful little convenience store. It's sort of the hub of the area. It's the only retail in that immediate area. The next closest towns are Delhi and Riegel, and they both have grocery stores, and there's even a Walmart. But again, you're talking 20 miles. So in that immediate community, there's a tiny little convenience store, and they're slammed. I mean, they said we were always busy, but now we're doing 3 times as much business as we were before.
Experienced all this excitement with this new train line between Alabama and between Mobile and New Orleans, that the people up in that part of the state are trying to get a train line between Dallas and Baton Rouge. Of course, it would run through Mobile.
Yep.
Through Monroe.
Mm-hmm.
And so Monroe would be a transportation hub. And so they're seeing big things happening over there.
I think Monroe and businesses in Monroe are going to benefit from this a lot. I mean, there are legitimate, real estate companies, there are equipment rental companies, there are construction companies, and some that are working as subcontractors in various mechanical this and that's, and so they're going to do, I think, really well. And there's a nice new hotel in Monroe that coincidentally opened at the beginning of the summer. So the executives or the managers that come in town, that's the only place to stay anywhere around,
So how big is this facility going to be?
Oh, it's going to be like the equivalent of, it's 70 football fields, 4 million square feet. It's going to be massive.
70? 70?
70, yeah. And it could get bigger. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg has alluded to the fact that this is going to be, even larger, potentially the size of Manhattan. I am a little bit skeptical of these kind of superlatives just because this whole AI thing is changing so fast. And every day there's some new technology and some new center that's bigger and better than the last. But I do think that this will attract other data centers to the area. We've heard that something in the Shreveport area is cooking. And then there are other types of industries, for better or worse, that are coming to the area as well.
So it definitely is going to have an economic impact. There is some concern also on the extra demands for energy, which are huge for this, and then also for water.
Of course, and there are very legitimate environmental concerns around the project, and I've really not focused on the environmental. My colleagues on the environmental team have. But yes, I mean, all around the country, places that have these massive data centers now are seeing water shortages, and they're seeing their utility bills go up. Meta is committed to covering the full cost of all of the power generated at the plant, as well as the cost of building 3 new natural gas power plants that are going to power it for 15 years. But after that, we're not sure what happens. And Entergy has said that they don't think rates will go up, but they can't promise that. And,
As you said, things are moving so fast in the arena. We'll just wait and see.
Right.
But it's underway right now.
very much underway,
Okay. All
changing
right.
fast.
All right, Stephanie, thanks a lot. Okay, James, let's go on over to you, because also underway is a mayor's race here in the city of New Orleans, and there were some debates that were held this week. You wrote about those.
That's right. There have been a number of debates in that race the last couple of days since Labor Day, really. The race has really picked up steam. Candidates are out in force trying to meet as many voters as they can before early voting begins on the 27th. On the WWL debate on Tuesday evening, which was a live televised debate, we saw like a real change in tone in this race. We saw State Senator Royce Duplessis really attacking the front runner in the race, Elena Moreno, accusing her or someone affiliated with her of sort of disparaging someone on his staff inaccurately. That has spawned a lawsuit, and on Tuesday night it turned into a very public, nasty attack on live TV, in which Moreno and Duplessis went back and forth. Moreno defended herself, basically saying that Duplessis was choosing to focus on this one thing because he doesn't want to focus on the issues. But it really sort of shows the tone of this campaign at a time when the candidates are really sort of under the wire to get their message across to voters.
There was a debate held earlier that day, am I correct?
That's right.
By the paper?
Yes.
And was the tone the same? Did you all?
It was a little quieter at that earlier debate. Again, the live TV debate was really the first time we've seen this confrontational tone in the race, which has continued since then. But at the newspapers debate, the candidates focus a little bit more on policy. Of course, infrastructure is sort of top of mind for everyone in New Orleans, as it long has been. Senator Duplessis has talked about his plan that he's talked a lot about on the campaign trail to build 40,000 new affordable housing units over a period of several years. It's very ambitious, sort of exemplifies the ambitious plans he's putting out there as he tries to, build name recognition and get across to voters. He also has talked about universal childcare, which is another very ambitious plan. Councilmember Moreno has talked about revamping a few city departments that she says, in ways that she says would really help small businesses and job growth. And Councilmember Thomas, Oliver Thomas, is the third sort of major candidate, talked at length about ecotourism and how he wants to sort of expand the ways that people can come to New Orleans, Bayou Sauvage, and sort of the other, what he says are like the underappreciated natural parts of the city.
The three major candidates, two of them are members of the council, Moreno and Oliver Thomas. So for Duplessis, the thing to do is to attack the council. But personally, I think it's been a fairly good council. And where you've heard, people talk about, well, the controversy and the disorder, where you've heard it most often has been attacking Cantrell, like on the travel. And I don't think the public's offended by that. I think the public is almost cheering that on. And so I don't know if attacking the council is that much of a chip in this race.
Yeah, and that will sort of be borne out in the weeks ahead as people begin casting early votes, and we hopefully will continue to see some polls. Senator Duplessis has seen this sort of angle of painting Councilmember Moreno and Councilmember Thomas as sort of complicit in the chaos at City Hall. Now, whether that will work for him is an open question. We haven't really seen Moreno's lead dissipate much in the polls that we've seen. And, to this point, the numbers show that people have a pretty high level of approval for the city council and for Councilmember Moreno and Thomas and their roles on the council, which is not the case for Mayor Cantrell, the outgoing mayor, of course.
Do we think she can get it in the first?
That is the question to watch as you watch these polls in the next couple of weeks, whether Councilmember Moreno can sort of expand her lead beyond 50%, which is the threshold the candidates need to get to win in the primary on October 11th. If she, starts to lose some support and starts to, go down below 50%, that's what to watch, and that could be sort of an opening for.
I think the answer to that question is yes, okay? Because there's some other minor candidates, and as you get to election day, the people who are polling for the minor candidates aren't going to be polling for them anymore. They're going to say these people don't have a chance, okay? And people tend, towards the end, to gravitate toward the front runners. And so I think she's going to be getting even more vote that's going to put it past that 50%.
But did a recent poll put her at about 50?
Put her at about 53%. Now, one thing to watch is that there are about 20% of voters are undecided. And of that figure, 80% are black voters. So there's a huge number of black voters in the city who haven't decided who they want to vote for yet. Of course, you have two African-American candidates in the race, and Councilmember Thomas and Senator Duplessis. Councilmember Moreno has pretty substantial black support herself, but it's an open question who those undecided voters will go to, or if they'll turn out at all.
What Moreno does have is female voters, too. I mean, the female vote in New Orleans is really strong.
And on the debate stage, these past two debates, there was another candidate other than the three majors, right?
That's right. At the newspaper's debate or forum on Tuesday morning, Frank Janusa, a Republican who polled about 7% in the last major publicly released poll, participated. And he's a CPA. He talked about his experience managing finances, and his pitch to people was really that the city, which has a budget deficit right now, really needs someone who's experienced in that area to turn things around.
So meanwhile, Duplessis is really continuing the attack on Moreno.
He is. He's also he's a charismatic candidate who has experience in the state senate, and he is sort of trying to present himself as sort of a new breath of fresh air in a city, and is really trying to tag Councilmember Moreno is complicit in what's been going on at City Hall. Again, the signs are kind of mixed as to whether that's working for him so far.
Okay, all right. Thanks a lot, James. Another race that's one to watch in Orleans Parish Sheriff's race.
Yeah, of the two more key races on the October 11th ballot, sheriff and mayor, they seem at this point to have a strong front runner in both cases. In this case, Michelle Woodfork, who's challenging Susan Hudson. There was a poll during the week, and she had like 45%. And then the incumbent Susan Hudson had 10%, and the other candidates had the remainder of that. And so at this stage, there's a possibility that that Wood Fork would win in the primary too. So that's going to be no fun election night, if everybody's winning in the primary. But as you see, the candidates, this is strange that the front runner is the last person alphabetically, and the incumbent is the first person alphabetically. But it really seems that the attention is right there. I guess the other former elected official is Julian Parker, who's a former judge. He was a criminal court judge for a long time, and Edward Shorty, who's a constable on the West Bank. But for all practical purposes, it looks like it's between Hudson and Wood Fork. 4 years ago, when Hudson was elected, it was a bit of a surprise. That was when that whole progressive movement was going on, not just in New Orleans, but around the country. And this was the idea about being more ideological about fighting crime and law enforcement. And there was a lot of big going on, and campaigns were being financed, and people were being defeated, and new DAs were being elected. And Susan Hudson rode that string right there. And the incumbent was
Marlon Gusman.
Well, it was Marlon Gusman, who had been like 17 years as a sheriff and had been a councilman. I mean, so he was really an established position. By the time he got into a runoff, it wasn't a surprise that he lost a runoff, but it was a surprise that he was forced into a runoff. And then Susan Hudson, who nobody really knew very much about, was elected. But one point I want to make that might confuse people is that a sheriff in Orleans Parish is something different than the sheriff in all the other 63 parishes, all right? Because in all the other parishes, and every parish is considered a sheriff's office, but in Orleans Parish, we also have the city government, which is like the prime government. And so a sheriff is not the law enforcer that a police chief is. We have a separate police department. Whereas in Jefferson Parish and all the surrounding parish, the sheriff is not just only the jailer, which is secondary, he is the law enforcer. He's like the police chief. And so it's like two different things. A sheriff in Orleans Parish is not the equivalent of a police chief, as is in other places, but it is a jailer and has enough responsibility right there with the jail. But anyway, so the polls are showing Wood Fork leading. It's going to be a hard sell, I think, at this point to
Indeed,
move everything around.
The Orleans sheriff definitely does have a lot of responsibility, and we've seen that certainly this past year. All right, thanks a lot.
And when you have jailbreaks, that hurts if you're sheriff.
Definitely.
Okay, I mean it's happened in the past. I remember a sheriff many years ago who had too many jailbreaks, and he was out of there. So.
And this was a big jailbreak.
Yeah.
With one still at large.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, thanks, E. Okay, Dawn, over to you in total confusion. Vaccinations, where do we stand now?
Well, let's talk about where we stand health-wise as a state before we even talk about the vaccinations with the issue of whooping cough in Louisiana, where we are experiencing the worst outbreak in more than 35 years with at least 376 documented cases and 2 deaths of infants, children under 1. Now, this is a disease that's easily vaccinated and is treated by vaccine, prevented by vaccine, but it's not an easy vaccine series. You get the vaccine as an infant at 2, 4, 6 months, then again at 15 to 18 months, then again at age 11 to 12. Then you're supposed to really boost it every 10 years as you're an adult. As an adult, you get boosters for it with your every 10-year tetanus vaccine too. So it's not 1 jab and you're done, or 2 jabs and you're done. It's a lot. So when we're in this era of vaccine resistance or vaccine confusion, it potentially only gets worse. Whooping cough vaccine is also highly recommended for pregnant women to get, and with each pregnancy, even not every 10 years, with each pregnancy, to help prevent that. So this week, the CDC's Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, or ACIP, is meeting and making new recommendations, hence adding to some confusion. Yesterday, it was announced that they recommended a change to the MMRV vaccine, which is the measles, mumps, rubella, and varicella being chickenpox. They've now recommended that the varicella portion be separated out until kids are at least 4 years old. It had been that you could get the MMRV as a 12 to 15-month-old and again at 4, and then you're done. So I talked to a health expert in the state today who says, we don't have herd immunity anymore for whooping cough. We don't have herd immunity anymore for measles. And the question is why? We had some vaccine resistance. We've had it for quite some time before COVID. You know, does it cause autism? Does it do this? Does it do that? You know, and then we had COVID, and now we have RFK Jr. in the, guiding things, and there's just a whole lot of confusion, and people don't know where to look. As a state, we have laws in place that say when the CDC Advisory Committee says this is the vaccine schedule, people are entitled to get vaccines without a prescription. If they're removed from that CDC schedule, then you have to have a prescription from your doctor. So it kind of it increases the
barrier.
It increases the barriers, that's the word I was looking for, thank you, to the vaccine for people. It's about 50% of our population who, if they have to get the prescription to get the vaccine, won't get them. So now we're seeing more COVID here than we've seen in quite some time. No COVID deaths, but more COVID cases. CDC advisory panel today, actually right before we came on the set, voted to say you do not need a prescription. So that means it's readily available. So we could potentially see some reversal in the CVS's and Walgreens of the world that were requesting a prescription to be able to give it, but they're not saying go ahead and get it. They're just saying you don't need a prescription if you. So the confusion just continues, and it makes it really tricky to know, as a parent or a provider or an older person or a younger person, what really matters to me. The best guidance most experts recommend is talk to the person who went to medical school, who is your doctor, who you trust, and see.
And requirements for schools in the state now, have there been changes there?
Not as of yet, but they're not doing big vaccine drives around the state anymore. It's very confusing. It may become school by school or district by district what we need to do at some point.
Okay.
Which I think the goal is to have some community oversight, and that's great.
Yeah.
However, sometimes I think we need to say, everybody needs to do this so that we can all stay healthy and safe. Because what happens is the kids get it in school, and they bring it home to the parents, and then the parents bring it to their parents, and then we infect our elderly population, and then we have real issues.
So follow the advice of your doctor?
Yeah, I mean, right now everybody's saying, you know, your personal beliefs really do matter, and they do, but maybe talk to a doctor too.
Okay. All right, Dawn, thanks. All right, Steph, let's wrap it up with you and Hard Rock. Remember that hotel collapse?
Almost 6 years ago.
Yeah.
That's right. Next month, we're coming up on the 6-year anniversary of the collapse. And yesterday, the very large plaintiff committee that represents 400 victims, ranging from, you know, business owners that were disrupted for months, to workers that were severely injured, to bystanders that happened to be on the street and got knocked, you know, by a piece of the debris or what have you. They have reached a tentative settlement with the developer, 1031 Canal, owned by the Kalis family. And the terms of the settlement will be secret, but this will basically resolve the main lawsuit that has been hanging out there for a long time. The developer and its insurance company has agreed to the terms of this settlement. That's huge. It's only a partial settlement because there are still a lot of other lawsuits out there against the contractor, against the engineer, against the steel company that manufactured the support beams that gave way, that caused the building to collapse. And so those cases may not be resolved for a long, long time, if ever. Also, the developer has sued those defendants as well. So you've got like suits and countersuits. There were 3 fatalities, 3 workers who were killed in the accident. Their families have received settlements from the developer in wrongful death lawsuits. So they have received some money that has gone to their children. The terms of that settlement were secret as well.
So the terms right now that are out there, I mean, will we ever know? Will that
I don't
be
think we'll
disclosed?
ever know. It'll be filed under seal, you know, which is kind of customary in deals like this. But it is a big psychological, you know, closure at some point, you know, to try to move this along. If to the extent that it ever could be. I mean, I think for the people who were affected, though, the pain never goes away.
Oh, of course it never does,
No.
but it's something that this community also will remember. I mean, it is hard to believe.
Huge. 6 years.
6 years ago.
And it hung out there for a long time before the city
Yes,
figured
it
out how to
certainly
bring it
did.
down, you know.
And yes, I mean, it was just
Yeah,
tragic
it was
to see
terrible.
that could not recover everyone who was lost, and if people recall that. So, yes, it's a bad memory, and certainly I'm sure anyone who has been impacted by it would just like to get things as settled as quickly as possible.
For sure.
All right, Stephanie, thanks. All right, guys, we're going to go around the table for other stories. Over to you.
The Downtown Development District announced this newsletter today that by the end of this past June, that there were 544 new hotels rooms being developed in the city. The most striking is the 1010 Common building, which used to be the Bank of New Orleans building. And part of that's going to be managed for long-term rental by the Fairmont. But anyway, it's going to be a very important development in the area.
Okay. Done.
All these changes from the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices have to be reviewed and approved by the head of the CDC. So look for that to happen maybe next week. We'll see. So no actual official changes yet, just votes. So we've got a lot to pay attention to in the next couple of weeks.
And the head of the CDC
Is an acting director right now.
Okay.
So we'll see
All
who
right,
actually makes that decision.
Okay. James, over to you.
So the federal indictment of Mayor Cantrell is moving along in the court system. Mayor Cantrell pleaded not guilty to the corruption charges that she faces last week, and so did her former police bodyguard, Jeffrey Vappy. She is set for a hearing next week to decide whether she will be allowed to travel to Iceland on a vacation with her family, which is a request she made this past week with the judge.
Okay. Stephanie, over to you.
Metairie Towers, the sort of big 50-year-old apartment complex in the heart of Old Metairie, goes up for auction on Monday. So get your nickels together for $10 million minimum bid. You can throw your proposal in the ring.
And that's been vacant for
Been vacant for a
since
long,
Hurricane
long
Ida.
time. A developer thought he had a great plan, and he bought it for $24 million last year, and then he was unable to secure the financing to do the ambitious renovation project that he had envisioned. He wanted to add penthouse apartments to the top and make it fancy and nice. He thought it would cost around $50 million and couldn't get the money to do it, so he's putting it back on the market.
Prime real estate.
It really is,
Yeah, it really is. All right, guys, thanks a lot for being here. Thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you again next week for Informed Sources. Have a good evening.
Support for this program comes from the Gail and Tom Benson Charitable Foundation, committed to funding educational causes.
This program is brought to you in part by the Eugenie and Joseph Jones Family Foundation, a local foundation proud to support education, the arts, and culture in the greater New Orleans area.